Hi everyone, I'm Jessica Roache, Senior Corporate Communications Manager at Ubisoft, and I'm incredibly honored to be here today at GAconf. I built and have been leading our Global Accessibility Communications program for more than 4 years now, and today I'll be sharing a bit about what we do and our lessons learned along the way. My hope is that you come away from this talk with a better understanding of how communications can help accelerate accessibility. For a little bit about me, I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill, moved to San Francisco, and got into gaming through my PR agency. I'm celebrating 6 years at Ubisoft this month. Many of you also work with my colleague Adriana, who joined Ubisoft as an intern in 2019 and has been co-leading our accessibility communications over the past few years. While we both work on other topics at Ubisoft, we each spend about 30 to 40% of our time on accessibility. If you haven't seen David Tisserand's talk from GAconf last year, Don't Let Your Vision Be a Dream, I recommend you watch it. You'll learn the story of how Ubisoft's accessibility team was formed and how they work with teams across the company to make our games and overall user experience as accessible as possible. If you have seen his talk, you may remember that early on, David was doing his own PR about Ubisoft's accessibility efforts on social media, and his post led to some press articles. Enter corporate communications. I reached out to David to let him know he would need to run this type of content by our comms team moving forward. I was visiting Ubisoft Montreal for another project and set up a coffee meeting with David to chat in person. Looking back, our expectations of that meeting were wildly different. David thought he was in trouble with the PR team, and I couldn't wait to learn more about his work and help tell Ubisoft's accessibility story. Needless to say, from that moment on, we've had a close partnership that has accelerated accessibility awareness at Ubisoft and beyond. Before getting into Ubisoft's accessibility comms program, I wanted to start with a quick overview on what public relations, or PR, is. PR can be about promoting products and making announcements. Here's a fun picture of me meeting the real-life boomer at a Far Cry 5 press event. PR is also about helping a company communicate its values, as well as identifying and aligning with internal and external stakeholders. Internal stakeholders are employees, and external stakeholders include press, content creators, and consumers. Remember these terms, as we'll come back to them. With PR 101 behind us, let's bring it back to talk about our communications goals at Ubisoft. First and foremost, we wanted to take the same approach as our accessibility team, making accessibility part of the DNA of the company. This is a big task. There are more than 19,000 employees at Ubisoft that work in more than 45 studios and are based in 30 countries. To truly make an impact, we emphasized an end-to-end approach and included this phrase in nearly every presentation to internal stakeholders. To communicate our commitment to accessibility, we have to prove it. That means from audio-described trailers to remote gameplay preview events to social media best practices, there was a lot of groundwork that needed to take place. And we had to strike the right balance of not overselling our work, but we also couldn't wait until we achieved perfection to begin talking about the work. Our PR strategy focused on two main groups of stakeholders: internal, our colleagues, and external, so press, creators, and consumers. For our internal stakeholders, we wanted to educate our colleagues and empower them with the knowledge and resources to drive accessibility in their own areas of expertise. For our external stakeholders, our two pillars were to inform and include. You may recognize these words from Steve Saylor's GAconf talk a couple of years ago, and I want to thank Steve for that talk and for giving us a great alliteration that would serve as our rallying cry. So now that we've covered our strategy, what did we achieve over the past 4 years? In the first year, we increased media coverage on our accessibility efforts by 522%. We supported speakers as they participated in more than 20 speaking opportunities about accessibility. We've been nominated for more than 30 awards and won 15 of them. We launched 15 and counting accessibility spotlights on Ubisoft News to detail the accessibility approach for each of our games. We released our first audio-described game trailer in April 2020, released 100 more, and stopped counting once we'd established a rubric to ensure our major trailers go through this process. And in September 2022, we produced the most accessible event in Ubisoft's history, Ubisoft Forward. And the most important result is what we heard from the community. You shared how our work impacted you, and that's the fuel that kept our program going. So thank you for continuing to share your feedback online. If you have only one takeaway from this talk, I want it to be this. There are hundreds of people waiting in the wings, and they will take accessibility much farther than you can. We amplified the accessibility team's work and educated our colleagues on the needs of the community and the impact we could have. We didn't take no for an answer. If one door closed, we knocked on another one. Ultimately, our success came from connecting and collaborating with people who were excited to help and spent their own time and energy researching and implementing accessibility best practices in their own areas of expertise. So many teams at Ubisoft, from events to brand operations to Ubisoft News and many more, have been instrumental in improving accessibility across our trailers, events, and social media. I wish I could tell you exactly how many times I use the phrase, "it takes a village," in an accessibility recap. This is just a peek at what we mean by making accessibility part of our company's DNA. Now that you know who was working behind the scenes, I want to take you through 3 case studies of what we did on the external comms front, focusing on our pillars of information and inclusion. One thing we heard from the community loud and clear was that players with disabilities wanted to know whether or not they could play a game before spending their time making a purchase and having to go through a return process if they weren't able to play it. This is about information. We leveraged Ubisoft News and worked on a series of articles for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Watch Dogs Legion, and Immortals Phoenix Rising back in 2020. The response we received from the community was great. You told us that you were happy to receive the information in advance, even if it meant we were sharing the game's accessibility shortcomings. Following the positive feedback we got from the first 3 articles, we came up with a name for the series, Accessibility Spotlights. Naming it helped us make Spotlights a standard. The format is a developer Q&A followed by an in-depth list of accessibility options. And we could refer to past spotlights every time we approached a dev team about sharing their game's accessibility info. We really had to get in the weeds and make a format that teams could plug information into during the busy months leading up to launch. However, one obstacle we frequently encounter is that our games are not 100% accessible to all players yet, and teams are understandably hesitant to share this info, knowing there's room for improvement. We continue to reinforce the need for and success of the spotlights, showing our teams that transparency is better than lack of information. One great example is Rocksmith Plus. On the surface, the Rocksmith Plus team didn't think they had a story to tell, given that learning to play guitar isn't typically what people first think of when it comes to games accessibility. However, after we worked together to bring the spotlight to life and highlight the team's inclusive design approach, Rocksmith Plus actually won the GAconf Award for Best Physical Mobility Accessibility. To learn more, I encourage you to watch Mark Fortier's GAconf talk from last year. Something we're constantly working to improve is timing. We aim to get spotlights out well in advance of launch. We released the Far Cry 6 spotlight 4 months before launch, and Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown 7 months before launch. But every development team has their own timeline, and we have to be flexible and work with each team to find the best timing. To recap, our lessons learned from this case study are first and foremost, start by listening to the community. There was a clear need, and by listening to the community throughout the process, we developed a solution to help meet that need. Be brave and be okay with transparency. Sharing accessibility information so early before launch isn't common in our industry, but it can provide the community the opportunity to share feedback that could be implemented before launch, allowing more players to enjoy the game. Set the bar, then raise it, but be patient as every team is different. Creating a standard process and showing examples of other team spotlights helped empower and encourage each dev team to do the same. Next, I want to talk about inclusion, namely the Accessibility Creators Program and how we help bring the program from informal to formal. Before I joined Ubisoft, my colleagues Holly and Joni had been sending review codes to some creators in the accessibility community. But we learned that providing access to our games after they launched wasn't enough. We wanted to give players with disabilities the chance to experience the game at the preview stage and provide their feedback, alongside other journalists and creators. In 2020, in-person events were off the table. Ubisoft was transitioning from in-person events to running the entire event digitally. This digital format was actually a great way for us to begin including accessibility creators. One particular example is Watch Dogs Legion. The developers were able to take the feedback from the creators who participated in the preview event and implement some changes to the game before launch. I should mention this is in addition to the ongoing playtests that were part of the development process, but it was a great proof point of the impact of including creators with disabilities at every touchpoint. Once again, our challenge here was to advocate for inclusion even when we knew the game wasn't fully accessible to the players we were inviting. We emphasized that our role was to provide access, and we welcome any critical feedback the players might have. Being so transparent can be scary, but we know it's worth it and want all players to check out our games and share feedback on how we can improve. We focused our efforts on establishing processes with teams around the world to ensure that including accessibility creators became par for the course. That also included making sure our presentations were subtitled and we had text-only review guides available. Then, last year, our organization shifted, and creators are no longer part of my team's scope. That's when we transitioned the program to the creators team. I know many of you know and work with Aiden. Since we had brought the program from informal to formal, we were able to share a detailed plan with best practices and empower the creators team to take the program farther than we could. There's so much more to come here, and we are always looking for new creators to work with. So, what did we learn from building the creators program? Assume positive intent. No one wants to actively exclude any group of players. Every team is dealing with their own constraints, and with the right guidance, they're happy to help. Go beyond accessibility is important, and come up with specific suggestions on how to implement best practices. And don't wait for perfection. We know we have progress to make, but we have to start somewhere and communicate about the journey. The final case study is something I'm particularly proud of because I know how many people around the world it took to make this happen. Last year, Ubisoft won the GAconf Award for Most Accessible Gaming Event. This was the result of years of hard work refining our processes and seeking to raise the bar for ourselves each year. The story actually begins with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the first trailer we audio described in April 2020. We learned about the need for audio description, and the Assassin's Creed team was all in on making it happen. We worked with Descriptive Video Works on an amazing audio-described version of the cinematic world premiere trailer. However, it's not ideal from a marketing perspective to have two versions of a trailer available at different links. Our first solution was to unlist the audio-described version. This helped us to continue creating audio-described content, but made it hard to find. After many discussions, we found a new solution, and that was by using YouTube's audio track feature, which was in beta. This feature allowed us to upload one trailer with multiple audio tracks, creating a sustainable way to release audio description at the same time and at the same link. Now, back to Ubisoft Forward. From a production perspective, our big press conferences are essentially a series of trailers that are all due at the same time. This becomes an epic feat of cross-team collaboration, and with each Ubisoft Forward, we continued to improve and iterate. We were committed to making sure that once we reached a certain level of accessibility, we didn't go below that bar. For Ubisoft Forward in 2021, we created 19 English audio described trailers and published Ubisoft's first ever audio description livestream. But there were some gaps, and only about 75% of that livestream was audio described. Fast forward to 2022, we produced the most accessible event in our history, with subtitles in 10 languages, 4 different sign languages, and this time 100% audio described livestream. For 2023, Ubisoft Forward was live and in person. The live format presented new challenges, and we were able to stream the show live with English subtitles, American Sign Language, and audio description, and 14 subtitled languages were available for the game trailers on YouTube. While there were fewer languages available, I'm so proud of our team for delivering the same level of quality as the previous year when we were able to pre-record. That brings me to my takeaways. Commit to accessibility for the long haul. Many programs that you see now are the result of many years of behind-the-scenes work, and progress can feel really slow at first with many setbacks. PR yourself. By this, I mean be your accessibility program's PR person. We send reports to all the project stakeholders after every win, big or small. Show your colleagues the impact of the work and support them as they become accessibility champions in their own areas of expertise. And dream big. When I met David for coffee, I could have never imagined I'd be involved in helping make Ubisoft Forward accessible. So my advice is to dream big, then dream a little bigger. I'll wrap up with some final words of advice to developers, marketers, and anyone looking to drive accessibility at your company. Don't be afraid to show your work. It's scary, but it's okay if you aren't there yet. Don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. Identify your quick wins. What are low-effort, high-reward activities versus what are longer-term commitments? Communicate often on both. Focus on and empower the advocates. Ignite the fire, and they will take the work farther than you could have imagined. Thank you so much for having me today, and a special thank you to some key team members that have opened doors and helped drive accessibility at Ubisoft.